Yes, yes. Apparently, words cost money on instant messenger. You should just like blink once for yes, blink twice for no. Tell me how it sounds. Like say, oh, it sounds really good. Or John, you sound like you're screaming. My wife just texted me and said, "Be nice, folks." This is my first ever radio. Okay, so Emily, just so you know, I'm gonna stop this cast. You sound angry. Oh my gosh. Okay, 3 minutes in, and I already sound angry. This is called angryradio.com. Okay, I'm going to stop the cast. I'm going to start it up. If you'll just leave it going, I'm going to start the whole thing over, okay? All right, this is the first night of startupradio.com. So this has been a radio show that I've been wanting to broadcast. I say radio because there's really nothing to see. I don't have a video camera. But this show is dedicated to startups. Really, the people who want to do a startup. So this has been an idea for years, and it's been a little hard to finally get all the technology together for me. I'm somewhat savvy on technology, but apparently when it comes to audio and YouTube, that was a little bit of a challenge. So if anybody's ever wanted to do something similar, I've just like gone the distance, and I could probably save you a lot of brain damage. So anyway, this show is dedicated to two types of people. Anyone thinking or interested in being an entrepreneur. More or less, you want to start a business, you have an idea, you want to self express, and ultimately have something come about because of your vision. The other group of people I'm hoping to talk to are the people that have started a business and are struggling. Okay? So, a little bit about myself. I have been an entrepreneur since I was in my mid 20s. I have started probably anywhere between 15 and 20 businesses. I would say most of them have been fun, but not all of them have been lucrative. I've had a few that have been lucrative, and it's been a lot of fun. But I'm an expert in startups. I've gone through the entire, startup process enough times that I really know my stuff. Right now, I'm an expert in systems and efficiency and how to basically make businesses start without a lot of risk, hopefully without a lot of capital. If you've been one of those people or have worried about the capital side, this whole radio show is dedicated to you. So let's start this whole program off with the first topic. What makes you think your idea is worthy to come to market? How many of you have an idea, have said to your family during Thanksgiving or every time you get together or you're at work, and someone says, "Wow, that's a great idea. You should make that, or you should start that, or you should do that." Some business idea. I had a good friend that had a wonderful idea. It had to do with basically improving the whole e-commerce delivery experience of products. And the more he talked, I was like, oh my gosh, you have the most amazing idea. What are you doing? Get started. Anyway, we've had some great conversations since then. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have probably had very similar experiences where you have your ideas validated. Some of you probably have some ideas that have been invalidated. And I think all of those are worthy of conversation. Okay? So something that you might want to consider is this radio program is going to basically help you figure out whether you should start your business or keep doing your business or maybe stop even. There's nothing wrong with stopping, not even anything wrong with failing. One of my favorite stories comes from the Talent Code. And it basically talks about how failure teaches a human, at least, maybe everything, but especially humans, that the more times you fail, but able to recover more quickly, your body starts to get more intelligent. Your mind starts to get more intelligent, okay? And so if you fail and then take forever to fail again, let's say you're so mortified or disappointed from a failure you had with some business idea or some product you tried to start, that you never tried again, well, your brain doesn't really figure out what to do better next time. Now, if you fail, dust yourself off, get up, do it again, fail. And again, nobody wants to fail, but it happens. We try things, and it happens even in day to day. It happens in our homes, it happens in our businesses where we work, and we fail. But if we quickly recover and try again, your brain starts getting really smart. Doesn't matter where you come from in life, no matter what your educational background, every human has this capacity. All of us have the ability to get smarter through basically experience. So I bring that up because my life has had a lot of that going on, where you try a business and you think it's great and you go and it doesn't work out. Some people might call that failure, but ultimately you learn something, right? There are some failures where you start, it just doesn't work out, and you move on, and there's really no splash, right? There's some where you really are excited, you launch and you crash and burn, and it's miserable, and you're kind of bitter about it. Well, I'm hoping to address a lot of those things throughout this program. I was talking to a good friend today earlier about what people need to know on this radio show. So again, this radio show is called Startup Radio, and I'm going to dedicate every program to three things. First, optimism, okay? There's enough people, what I call poo-pooing your ideas, all right? That's already happened. Your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your coworkers telling you to not do something, okay? You have an idea, you're certain it's a good idea. You see the problems, you're identifying the opportunity, and at some level you're saying, gosh, this is such a good idea, and there's something that keeps you from going. It might be know-how. It might be just someone to help you push the idea down the road a little bit. And I think in the end, if you have hope, whether you do the idea or not, you won't give up on your desire to add value to the universe. Okay? Now, part of the program I want to dedicate to really important topics, okay? Some of the topics could be basically capital required for a new idea, the important ways you go about determining if an idea is, let's say, viable, or feasible, whether there's a market for your idea, whether there's demand, whether there's enough money in the idea, meaning some ideas are really cool, but there's just no money being made. The margins are so small, even though everybody needs it. Maybe you shouldn't do it. You're just going to work really hard and never make a lot of money. You might feel like that's worth it, but sometimes there's just not enough money in ideas unless you have some unique way to capitalize better. And then ultimately, I want to do like a mini. Think of this as like a mini Shark Tank Express, where you can text in and give your ideas, and ultimately share your pitch with somebody that can give you feedback and tell you basically, like on Shark Tank, things they like, things they don't like, things that you're going to have other investors ask you, and basically prepare you for some of that bumps and bruises that happens as you try to push the idea forward, okay? So imagine the show, basically, we're going to talk about cool ideas that have come about, really great ideas, some ideas that, some stories that maybe should have failed but succeeded, right? So that's kind of interesting. And then ideas that should have succeeded and failed, right? And we're going to talk about very specific things for a while. And I'm going to bring on some cool guests. I'm going to bring on other VCs, right? Venture capitalists. I'm going to bring other entrepreneurs. I'm going to bring on people that are experts in the industry that I believe, through my experience, have made a profound effect on the way to start an idea, okay? And last, we're going to do a Q&A. You can text in your ideas. You can instant message me. You can text message me. And basically ask me questions, and someday I'll get my tech that maybe we can even have you call in, right? Where I can somehow sync in your audio with this YouTube cast, okay? And then naturally, I would love to have you give your pitch. Now, some of your pitches you might feel like you need to protect, and I'm not asking you to do anything you're uncomfortable with. Ultimately, if you're like, I have a great idea, I really want some feedback, not from your mom, not from your dad, not from your wife, but someone who's completely got nothing, no skin in the game, no dog in the fight. And ultimately, if it's a good idea, two things will happen. First, I'm going to tell you that this is a great idea and you need to not give up on it. Other people might beat you to the market. That's okay. It's a little frustrating, but it's life, okay? The other thing is, I might find that this idea has some interesting aspects to it. I may not be the best person to really determine if it's a good idea or not. And that's probably a higher chance, right? I don't have all experiences, but I have enough that maybe I can give you the right direction. But ultimately, if I can get you in touch with the right people, I've just added value to the market. I enjoy doing those kind of things. So in the end, if you have an idea, I want you to text in and basically give your pitch. Like, hey, I have this little widget, and here's a problem that we always have at work, and I'm certain that if I made it, it would solve the problem and we'd save all this kind of money and I'd make all sorts of money. Well, a lot of those ideas are genius, and it's sad that so many of them never come to market. And I believe a majority of the reason why that never happens is because of vision, meaning you just don't know what to do next. You understand what it's got to do, you understand what it's got to look like, but somehow you got to go to a factory, or you got to go, and how do you get people to distribute these products for you? How do you get market share? How do you advertise? How do you go on Google AdWords, and how do you do those ads on Google and Facebook and all that other stuff? I mean, there's a whole avenue of basically, once you have a good idea, how do you get people to buy it, right? So that's the big vision of an idea is you have a great idea, but how do you get people to know about it? And when they know about it, how do you get them to buy it, use it, employ it? You know what I mean? Whether it's a service, whether it's a business or a product, okay? So I want to start this program, and I'm going to dedicate basically some things that I've learned on what makes for a good idea, okay? So my favorite ideas tend to generate around things that make things go faster or don't take as much energy to do again. Case in point. So I worked at a place a long time ago, and we had a process in our office where we had all these things that had to happen. Like the first guy had to go and make a change on a report, and once that change was happened, then another guy would go look at that report, and when he looked at that report, he would go, oh my gosh, apparently I have some information here that I need to do with. He'd walk it over to somebody else, and he would deliver it. And once that person had passed on that information, the next guy, the third guy in the chain, would then have to ultimately decide whether the information was actionable, like do I need to go do something or not do something. And imagine that happening all throughout the office. Okay, so that's happening hundreds of times over, and ultimately giving spending a lot of time, a lot of energy. Okay, and so I come into this place and I'm thinking, man, this is a lot of work, and my wife just texted me, my first text in my radio show, are you recording this? And the answer is abso-freaking-lutely. Anyway, thank you for asking. You're wonderful. Thank you for listening. You're my only listener, so you're my biggest and best fan. Of course, you are on and off the radio, so you're always going to win that. So everybody else, just know you're going to always be second, okay? Anyway, so I come into this office and I'm like, wow, this is a lot of work, and I see it works. I see it's established. People understand it, and it works, right? But at some level, which a lot of you have done, you ask yourself, there's got to be a better way, right? How many times have you been that person to say, there's got to be a better way? We do that with government a lot, right? We're bumping into like the DV, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way. Well, in this instance, I was determined. I was like, man, this is a lot of work. There's just got to be another way. And by the way, this is way before apps, way before like cool like programming was really out. And this isn't like in the Stone Age or anything. It was just early enough in the development of the web that there wasn't really a lot of know-how on this stuff. But I said, you know what? If we could do this via our phones, right? This is like kind of funny talking this way because we do so much on our phones now. I'm certain that we can take this information, just send it all the way to the very last person without anybody in the middle touching it, and let a program, right, make the decisions for us because we've given it the logic, like to say, if this, then do this. If not, do that, right? And have a whole bunch of those little questions throughout the process that it can do a lot of those things that a human normally would do. Now, the funny thing about our human process was humans made mistakes, right? Here's an example, right? One of the things that this report was doing was communicating a formula to somebody that had to order materials, okay? And those materials followed the formula, okay? And these formulas were only like, I don't know, like 5 letters, right? So it'd be like WP250. That formula or that label meant a formula. Well, if you transpose the numbers like WP205 or WP150, and that can happen when you have hundreds of those to do in a day, which we did. And it happened every so often. A human would transpose the data or would just type the wrong thing, right? Well, that ultimately set off a whole chain reaction of a lot of purchases and a lot of deliveries and a lot of ultimately things that couldn't be reversed. And what would happen is we would discover it because some quality assurance or quality control mechanism later, far down the chain, would say, hey, I see what was delivered wasn't what I have on my spec sheet, so this is no good. But now that the product's delivered and mixed and batched, unfortunately, it's done, right? It's been mixed, and once it's mixed, it can't be unmixed. And so what we in our office had to do was just say, well, throw it away. And we'd have to start over. And so all this money was just thrown away. So I'm sitting there going, gosh, there's got to be another way. And I go to a good friend of mine. I say, look, here's this idea. This is a problem we're having at work. And there's just got to be a better way. And he said, well, why don't we write a website that you can access through your phone, which again, not many people did back then because there wasn't a lot of bandwidth on your phone and Wi-Fi wasn't invented yet. But I was like, well, of course, yeah, if I could somehow be where I needed to be and enter the information where and when I needed it, ultimately, that would be more accurate than if I had to wait throughout the day and then transmit that information and potentially write it wrong. And so this website ultimately only had a drop-down menu, right? Only certain things could be selected. And if I selected a certain client, only certain formulas were available, meaning I couldn't accidentally pick someone else's formulas, like on different clients. So, I mean, again, these ideas aren't, I mean, you probably have similar things like this happening in your life, whether you're an accountant, whether you're in operations, or maybe even in sales, right? You know, a sales goes wrong and your client's all mad at you because something goes wrong down the line. Well, in the end, you sometimes know what to do. Sometimes, right? Sometimes you see the problem, but you don't know what to do. And that's life too. But sometimes you see the problem, you know how to solve it, and you ultimately know exactly what to do to get the job done. And those are some of those really exciting moments. And if you know what I'm talking about, you feel it. It's strong. It's an emotional reaction of almost like you've done it. And now the hard work begins of how do I go from where I am now to that point where people are actually using my idea. And if you've already tried this, you know, if you're that other group that I'm trying to reach out to, people that have started, somebody's gone out the door, someone who's potentially put together a prototype or a widget or knocked a few doors to try to have people buy your service and not had a lot of success, well, you know what I mean. That whole like moment where you're basically trying to say, how do you get people to basically appreciate the value, right? Appreciate the value. So, I guess I would want to tell you that when I implemented that idea, it was scary. I was young, but even if I was older, the first one is always scary. It's a bunch of big unknowns, right? You don't quite know what to expect. You worry about people thinking you're an idiot, or maybe you step, you know, on something that you weren't certain of, and what I call landmines, and you look silly, or maybe you're overconfident and make a mistake or something, right? Well, I would say that's all unfortunate, and it's worthy of validation that it is painful. And I would still say, in the end, it's okay. Deep down, nobody really cares. There might be a few people like, you're an idiot. It might even be a client saying you're fired. It might even be someone that you depended on who doesn't want to work with you anymore, which are all hard and all painful. However, in this case, when I went out the door, I was scared, I was nervous, and I still believed in the end it was a great idea. I went to the owner of the company and I said, look, I have an idea, and I really believe this is going to change the way we do business in this one particular way. Because they had been doing business a certain way in this department, and me going in there and suggesting a different way kind of was rocking the boat. They were kind of like, hold on. You're nobody. You don't know our systems like we know it. We've been doing this forever. How can you improve this? And that was hard, right? You've been that person. You've been in a position where you're being challenged. Your intelligence, your reputation, your credibility is being challenged. And at some level, you may even believe them. That you're like thinking, right, who am I, right? What am I doing here? Well, at the same time, if you just say, well, while that may all be true, I would still say that I have an idea, and I believe that if it is if it's really worth it, you'll feel it, you'll know it, you'll see the value. You may have some spreadsheets, you might have a graph, you might have some supporting documents, but in the end, when you disclose the idea to somebody, which is what I had to do. I had to go through the owner and I said, here's the idea. And I said, here's the problems that we're having, right? Identifying the problem. Here's how I believe I can solve it. And here's the benefits, meaning here's how much money we're going to save, or how much money we're going to make, or how many customers will be happy, or how many people's lives we will change, right? And ultimately, I was super nervous. I went in there and I said, here's what I got to do. And they kind of, I could tell they weren't terribly confident. I was young. I was like 25. And these guys were like in their 60s, and they were rough. They were cowboys. They really had been doing the same thing for a long time, and it had made them a lot of money. And there was really no reason for them to say, hey, we should change everything and do it different. And they all acknowledged a couple things. One, I brought up challenges that they had all experienced and had cost them a lot of money. And so I knew at some level they would agree with me that that is painful. We're tired of those mistakes. And then I would say, and imagine that 5 years ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, this technology wasn't available, and now it is. So paradigm shift, right? So imagine if all you have to do is go through this process, go on your phone, tap on the website, click the right boxes, and it transmits that data all the way to the very last person without going through any humans. And the process is clean, it's precise, and in the end, if we make any mistakes, we can always fix the code. And then that mistake never happens again. And these guys, I mean, they had used software. They have software for their accounting and all these other things. And so they were like, it's about time we had something like this, right? And it was kind of cool to finally feel like, at some level, my idea was valuable. And that was an awesome moment. It didn't mean I made any money yet, but I was like, at least I'm not crazy, right? So I remember them saying, well, this is really cool. How much money do you want? And it was funny. I hadn't really thought about it. I just knew it was worth a lot. And I said, well, I don't know. And I'm willing to figure that out with you. Now, that may not be the way you should do it, but at that level, I just didn't know. And maybe a better businessman would have said, well, let me think about it, or would have pre-thought about it and said, $1 million, Well, eventually, I got it to the point where I said, I want $1 million, which is, I think, silly, because why is it always $1 million, right? I should have said a number that was a little different, like 2.7 million or something. Anyway, so they're like, okay. And I said, here's why it's $1 million, because you'll make that $1 million back within 6 months. So now you're going to be able to recover that $1 million basically every 6 months for potentially 4 to 5 years. That's kind of the rule of thumb to figure out how often something will be repeated or how long something will stay alive in terms of a innovation or a cost saving measure. So anyway, So there I am. I'm sitting in front of these big wigs. I'm really nobody. And they're like, okay, deal. I was like, whoa. And I realized this was crazy cool and crazy scary, because at a level I didn't really believe it would happen. Even though I knew it was a great idea and I had to do it, I didn't really believe it, right? It's like, that's the funny thing about an idea. You believe it so much that you go out and do the work. But then when someone says, okay, I want to buy, you're like, whoa, wow, okay, now what do I do, right? And so then I had to really work, because then I really had to write a lot of code. And I eventually had a lot of support. A lot of people reached out. They kind of felt this idea was worth their time and energy, and we put it together. Now, the end of the story is I never finished the deal. In full disclosure, I had a buyer, I had a contract, and I never finished the deal. That was one of my biggest struggles when I was young, was I didn't know how to finish, right? I didn't know what to do. Like every step of the way, I was unsure of what to do next. And ultimately, I got chicken. And so I backed out, which to me, looking back, I probably would have been a millionaire at a very young age and would have been laughing the whole way to the bank. But instead, I was worried what people would think about me. I was worried about, if I would fail, and I let that get to me. So if you're anywhere in that zone, I totally understand where you're coming from. Now, you may also be the person that is invincible, and you're just like, I'm not worried about those things. Well, honestly, you're one of the few people. Most of us worry about stuff, right? And at some level, the people that are invincible and are bulletproof and just go forward and aren't really worried about failure, that is a trait that I admire. And at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, right? You're going to probably, be a bull in a china closet a little bit and probably rub a few people wrong, and you probably know what I'm talking about. You probably recognize that. You may not necessarily take responsibility for that, but you might say, yeah, man, everybody seems to think I'm a jerk or something. Well, the funny thing is, both, whether you're worried or not worried about how your idea will succeed or how it will be received, really is immaterial. In the end, is if you do everything consciously going forward, it will be okay, even if it ends up not happening. And not happening sometimes is just fine. Not happening may mean you just saved yourself a lot of brain damage. A lot of ideas get started, and they may lose a lot of money. And for all we know, you made the right decision to say, I don't know if I should go forward anymore. And none of us are going to know how it really would have gone because you stopped. But if you could see how it would have played out, maybe, just maybe, it was like a blessing in disguise. You missed and dodged a huge bullet. And that's how I chalk it up. When I don't go forward with an idea, I say, well, I'm gonna just have faith and hope that the better outcome was not going forward, because I made my choices in consciousness, right? I did it without fear. I just did. I said, you know what? I'm going to make a choice that I'm not going to go forward. And yes, that is painful, but I made a choice. I didn't do it because I was worried about what you would think or what someone else would think, or maybe I was just, doing it in a basically a reactionary way. Okay. So anyway, so here's the next segment, or the next portion of this radio broadcast. And this whole radio is about startup. Okay. So I'm interested in your ideas. If you say, I'm wondering what you think about this, I want to know about it. I want you to text me, email me at startupradio@gmail.com. Okay, that doesn't really exist, but anyway. And you're basically going to describe your idea in as few or as many words as you want. Know right now that if it's a really long email, I'm just probably not going to read all of it. I'm really looking for your elevator pitch, which sometimes is really hard, but you can just say, basically, I'm a trucker and I see this problem all the time, and I think we should do this. And I might go, wow, I have no idea how that's a good idea. And I might write back, why is this important? And you might say, because we spend $70 million a year on that. And I'll be like, dang. If you're spending that kind of money and your business is doing this, that's opportunity. The next question is, why isn't anybody else doing it, right? Why are you like, what do you know that no one else knows? There is a chance that you're the lucky guy that happens to stumble across something that nobody thought about before. That does happen. Not often, though. Be aware that if you feel like you're the only one with the idea, kind of a red flag. The truth is, when you're the only guy doing it, it may be because you're lucky and you're the only one. The other possible alternative is that people don't do it on purpose, meaning there's a reason why they don't go into that space and solve that problem. Maybe because it's too hard. Maybe because it's too expensive. Maybe it's because it's too complicated, right? You got to get too many parties together to solve the problem. You probably may be the only one that would know that, right? You understand your market. You're in it. You're living it. You're breathing it. And in the end, guys like me can ask you questions to bring up your consciousness. And ultimately, you can say things like, or I can ask questions that basically give you the opportunity to say, oh my gosh, yeah, I guess that would make sense that the accounting department would have to, be involved, and maybe even the government, and maybe even our vendors. And I might say, well, those are all worthy things in any idea to potentially have to work together. And sometimes when too many pieces have to work together, the journey to make all that work is so long. And if you're new at this, I would recommend don't do those ideas. Why? Because you're going to go down that road and most likely spend a lot of time and maybe some money, maybe even a lot of money. And because you're a rookie, you probably won't realize what you don't know, right? You'll just be going along and you're basically only seeing a little bit in front of you at a time. And once in a while you get a few feet in front of you and you can see ahead of you, but most of the time you can't see that far in front of you. And if you knew in the beginning that, wow, this is a 5-year journey and it will be very costly the whole way, be it your time, maybe capital, and in the end you only make 20 grand. That's how valuable this idea is. And you'd be like, well, that's dumb. Why would I spend all that time and energy to make 20 grand? Well, not that that's really the feeling when you start this, but sometimes you don't realize it in the end. Well, some guys like me who've been around the block, there's a lot of us out there who have gone out there, banged their head against the wall, made some money, lost some money. They can kind of give you a heads up of like, yo, you really got to be careful here, because you may be smarter than me on this, which could be very, very possible. But here's a couple things that I'm already seeing that if you go down this road, you may find this a very long and maybe painful journey. And some of you might say, it's worth it. It's worth it. People are like, freaking go for it then, right? No problem there. And at other times I'll be like, Why aren't you doing it right now? What is keeping you from doing it? And some people are like, I don't know. It's just, gosh, it's this idea won't go away. And I'm like, no, really. There's a reason why you're not doing it. Are you too busy at work? Is it because you need $50 million? Is it because it's really not your idea? Is it because you really don't know what you're doing? Like, you really don't know the facts? Like, you see it across the way. You're like, oh, weird. These guys are doing stuff over there, and that's silly. Why are they doing it that way? But deep down, you're not in the business, and so you don't really know. Whatever the reason is, there's always the truth behind everything, where probably guys like me, and I advocate that I could probably get there, that we could pull that out and we can go in the end and go, wow, whatever you're doing, you need to do more on this idea. Like, spend more energy on this idea. I'm an advocate of not spending more money. Here's a case in point. Constantly, I have people come up to me and they're like, hey, I got an idea, John. What do you think? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And they're like, so I need to get a website. I need to get servers, and I gotta get, widgets, and I gotta get prototypes. And I'm thinking, yeah, of course. All those things make sense. I gotta, kind of hire some people, and I'm thinking, okay, great. Now, at this stage, you're still not even in the startup phase, right? You haven't even started yet, and you're already thinking about some pretty expensive stuff. Sometimes there are cheaper ways to do all those things, right? And so I'll always say, well, hold on. Have you validated the idea? Validating the idea is really to go out and not just ask yourself, not just ask your friends, but go out and really make sure that people really want this. Okay, now that has to be balanced. You don't want to give away your idea. You don't want to tip your hand to what you know. But there is ways, and we can talk about that, of going out and basically validating the idea. Okay, and that is getting the market to say, wow, you got a great idea. I wish if you had it right now, I'd buy it. Okay, that's validation. Validation is someone's willing to part with their money to buy your widget or product or service. Okay, so anyway, people come up to me all the time, and they always list a whole bunch of stuff, and they start dropping $1,500 for a marketer that they'll pay for 5 days. They'll throw in maybe a website design guy for $2,000 or $5,000 even. They'll start building an app, or I don't know. They just start throwing a lot of money down, and all that makes sense. Like, in terms of when you want those things, you should pay for those things. And my attitude is, hold on. You could spend a lot of that money and never really know if this idea should be done. And so I would say, work harder in the very beginning to make sure this is worth the money, okay? And when you want to spend money, stop it and just say, how can I spend this money cheaper, okay? So in this case where people come up and ask me, hey, John, I got this great idea, and I want to get a website guy, and I'm going to hire some developers and everything. I'm like, okay, great. And I said, have you gone out to the market to find out if people want this? And they're like, well, how can I? I don't have a website. I don't have a prototype. I don't have widgets, right? I don't have a truck to, do my service. I say, yeah, but you can, go on Facebook and maybe even pay for an ad and just see if anybody clicks on it. You might spend $10 and get maybe 20 clicks, maybe 100 clicks. I don't know. And again, you might say, I have no idea how to do an ad in Facebook. And I'll say, perfect, because I can help you do that. I can walk you through it. We can show you. There's YouTube videos. You can watch them tomorrow, tonight. In the end, you need to spend the energy to just see if anybody will even pay attention to the idea. Okay? Super cheap, super easy, right? You're not giving away your IP, your secret sauce. You're just basically trying to see what interest. And again, it's just a pulse. It's not like God's coming down and saying, this is a great idea, do it or don't do it. It's just a basic way of saying, other than myself, at least some people are clicking on this, right? So I've had ideas where I'm like, this is genius. And I go out to Facebook and I'm like, hey, Facebook, I have this idea. Click here to know more. And it's crickets. I'm like, no, come on. I know this is a great idea. And now the ad might have been terrible. The demographics might have been terrible. Like, I might have failed in a few different ways. But in the end, if I got 0 clicks, which has happened, I'm going to take that as a quick clue to say, well, whatever I was thinking in the beginning probably may not be the best way. I may be fooling myself. It might have been perfect, but I just don't have any information to back it up yet. So then I think of different ways to go about it. Maybe I need to find a different way to validate it. So in cases where people want to spend a lot of money up front, some ideas require that. And I usually can sense that out and be like, yeah, that makes sense. You should do that. But most of the time, and I mean this most of the time, and I'm telling you, you fit into this, don't spend the money yet. Don't drop the 5 grand on an attorney on a patent. Don't drop the 20 grand on some professional who will build you an app. Don't do it. Now, you will do it eventually, and you will probably need to do it, but I promise you, you'll get more later. Like, you'll get more value for that 20 grand or 5 grand later. And I promise you, you're going to wish you had that 5 grand in your pocket to go pay for advertising. Because in the end, having a market demanding your products is what you really want. When you say, hey, I have a great idea, what you're really saying is, I need people to say, can I have it? Because if nobody wants it, I don't know if it's really that valuable. Now, it may be like, free energy, perpetual motion. Do people want it? Of course, but maybe nobody knows about it. So, there's that. So anyway, folks, this is my time for you to text in and instant message in basically your ideas. And we're going to spend the next 5-10 minutes just talking about your ideas. Maybe we'll do one, maybe we'll do two. So think of this like a Shark Tank, mini Shark Tank, or Shark Tank Light. And I'm going to basically beat up your idea a little bit. I'm going to validate it a little bit. And ultimately, I'm going to give you some pointers that I believe, if you follow them, probably will get you down the road a little bit better. And I'm going to make sure you don't waste your money. Okay? And anyway, so I got one text here. A guy here has an idea. He's saying that he has a way to ultimately save people on shipping costs. Okay? So if you check out online and buying some widget, let's say from Amazon or whatever, that he believes there's a way to save money as a consumer on how to get something overnight. Okay, so he's going after a very slim portion of the overall package transportation logistics market, right? He's not doing the ground. He's not doing next day. He's doing same day. So that's the part he's trying to capitalize on it. And he's basically wondering what can he do to get clients interested in his idea, right? So I'm a big fan of trying to get clients before you have a product. As long as you understand the steps before you that would require you to complete to be a real idea. I mean, I don't like scamming people. And at the same time, I can say, this is what I'm going to do. Are you interested? And they might say yes. And I know steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to the end. And now I just have to go do those things, right? And that way I don't feel bad if I go into people and say, hey, I have this idea. I believe you should buy it or use it. So in this case, I would say for this gentleman that the first thing I would do is try to figure out who are the best people for distribution. Meaning, how do you get your idea out to people the fastest? Well, e-commerce. Okay, so who's involved in e-commerce? Well, you have FedEx, right? You have UPS, you have USPS. And how hard is it to get your ideas into those places? Well, I would say fairly hard. Why? Because every guy and their dog would love to get their logistics idea into those big powerhouses of transportation. Naturally, if you get into the UPS, the USPS, the FedExes of the world, it's like getting into Walmart, right? You're going to have massive distribution once you get to them. What I mean is, how do you get those guys, the FedExes of the world, to use your idea so that more people have access to your idea? For instance, you can select when you go to check out FedEx 2-day, FedEx ground. You can do FedEx next day, overnight, same day, right? You have all those. So imagine now you're one of those line items. Now, people won't know that necessarily, but you would. You would say, oh, that little label right there is me. When the people select that, FedEx is ultimately saying, we're going to use XYZ code to do this thing. Maybe use your technology, use your software, or use your carrier, right? Or your method of transportation. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of somehow talking to folks that have access to those people. And you might say, I don't know anybody at USPS. I don't know anybody at FedEx. I don't know anybody at USPS. And I'd say, well, naturally, there are software developers out there. There's apps and whatnot who have already got access to those people. And I would say you're going to give up some of your margin. You're going to maybe even get up some of your company, for all I know. And I'd go work with those guys, the guys that already have relationships and that sell software or technology to those companies, right? So you're going to go knock their door. Big risk, they could steal your idea. So somehow you have to create the environment so that if you go in there and tell them everything, that if they turn around and steal your idea, that either they'll be in trouble, right? Like, let's say you patented the idea, or you have them sign an NDA. Now, all those things create big problems, right? If you're going to go into FedEx and say, I want you to sign this NDA, non-disclosure agreement, I promise you right now, they'll just laugh and tell you to leave. Or they'll say, no, we're not going to sign it, and you can leave. So in a way, NDAs don't really make sense. But imagine if you were able to get demand on your product before you walked in that meeting, right? Where their position is now, if we don't do this, this guy's going to walk and take with him all that market. So imagine going out to the market, doing a survey like through Facebook or maybe through Google or something, and maybe you spend $100 on this, maybe even $500, and get market research that says, if this was available, you would pay for it. So you're now going in with facts to your clients, your potential clients, your prospective clients. And let's say you get all these people saying, if you had this, or if I had this available right now, I would do it right now. And you're going to say, look, I already have people who want this. You already have people selecting methods of transportation. And in the end, if you do this, you will make more money. And that's the hard part, right? You got to demonstrate how much money people will make. So they'll do the math right there in front of you and say, ultimately, I have to, this is worth enough money because this guy understands this market, that if I don't do this, I'm walking away from, like, say, $20 million or $2 million or some number that matters to them, right? And anyway, so that's what I would do. I would first try to do maybe one or two things, try to get in with the big distribution positions out there of people, and ultimately work with the people that have access to them already, which are software guys, right? Go and find a couple. Go find out who sells technology to those people, and just say, I have an idea and I want to partner with you. Just say it just like that. I want to partner with you, and they'll probably go, let's talk. I would first feel them out about trust. Just, do you trust them? Just get a vibe. They might say, we're the number one guys in the universe. If you don't work with us, you'll never get in there. And if you're like, man, I just got such a terrible vibe, don't do it. Who cares if you never get the site to market? If you're uncomfortable the whole time and hate the whole experience, it's not worth it. If you go in there like, I love these guys, and then you get scammed, frustrating, and it's okay. It's going to happen. But I would advocate that maybe what you should do is just go in there with hope that these people are going to be honest, as long as you feel good about it, meaning your gut tells you, I don't feel uncomfortable, I just don't know what to do, right? It's not, oh, these guys really sketch me out. I'm worried that they're still my wallet before I leave. And then I'd try to get the market to try to drum up some demand, right? Try to get the market to say, you know what, I wish we had this. You know, it's kind of like talking about pre-sales, right? Investors, partners, anybody who's going to put something at risk like capital or their reputation, ultimately want the certainty that it's going to sell. And so getting customers and the market to say, I want this, is their little warm fuzzy blanket that basically helps them to take a risk. So anyway, that's my show for tonight, guys. It's been exactly 45 minutes and 39 seconds. I appreciate all you've done and all your ideas. We're going to do this every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. And if you want to send in your ideas, send it to startupradio@gmail.com. Have a good night.